In that single moment, when a man enters a woman, something far more complex unfolds than most ever imagine. For years, intimacy has been reduced to something physical, a quick exchange of desire, tension, and release. Yet Jungian psychology reminds us, nothing in the human heart is ever that simple. In those quiet, wordless moments lives a storm of emotions men rarely confess. Not to their partners, not to their friends, sometimes not even to themselves. Behind his calm face may lie truths that could completely change the way you understand love, trust, and attraction. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Nowhere is this truer than in intimacy. For a man, entering a woman is not merely passion. It's a threshold, a crossing point where his persona, the mask he wears for the world, meets his shadow, the self he hides. Within him awaken ancient archetypes, the lover, the child, the warrior, each stirring waves of vulnerability, fear, and longing. That's why intimacy often feels full of contradictions, tenderness and hesitation, passion and withdrawal, closeness and silence. In this video, we'll uncover 5 hidden Jungian truths about what a man really feels in those moments of deepest connection. These are not shallow dating tricks or surface-level explanations. They are deep psychological insights into why some men pull away, why others cling, and how women can respond, not with confusion, but with awareness. By the end of this video, you'll see through a new lens. When you understand, you no longer need to chase or guess. You gain the freedom to meet love with clarity, compassion, and strength. If these reflections resonate with you, remember to like this video and subscribe to Jungian Mind Shift for more Jungian insights and heart-to-heart conversations. Now, let us begin with the first hidden truth, one that will completely shift how you see his silence, his touch, and his hesitation in the most intimate moments. The first thing a man feels in intimacy is a surge of power entwined with a deep undercurrent of vulnerability. It's as if 2 opposing currents rush through him at once. On one hand, he feels chosen, affirmed in his masculinity, proud that a woman has opened herself and entrusted him. This moment awakens something ancient within him, the primal drive to conquer, to create, to prove potency, to stand as the giver of life. But within the same breath, he becomes fragile, exposed, uncertain, fearful that he may not live up to what she truly desires. This paradox often confuses women. They see confidence, the masculine force, the drive. Yet suddenly they notice a flicker in his eyes, hesitation, silence afterward, or a quiet need for validation that's never spoken. He asks not with words, but with touch, in how he holds you closer, or how he drifts away. The question beneath it all is, am I enough? Did I satisfy her? Will she still want me tomorrow? These are not childish doubts. They are the secret shadows men carry. Jung helps us see why. The persona, the mask of confidence, collides with the shadow, the hidden fear of inadequacy and rejection. And in that collision, his inner archetypes awaken. The lover feels triumphant and alive. The child trembles, longing for comfort. The warrior insists on control, on appearing strong even when he's uncertain. This is what makes intimacy with men so layered and sometimes so confusing. Some men hide this fear beneath bravado. They exaggerate, act dominant, or boast afterward. But this isn't arrogance. It's armor, forged to silence the small voice whispering, "What if I wasn't enough?" Others allow vulnerability to surface. They soften, gaze deeper, and seek connection beyond the physical. These are the men who risk being seen fully, and in that risk, they become more whole lovers. Women often ask, "Why does he seem distant after intimacy?" Or, "Why does he suddenly hold me tighter?" The answer lies in this dance between power and vulnerability. If his shadow of fear overwhelms him, he withdraws, rebuilding his mask of confidence. If he feels safe, he leans in, seeking reassurance that helps him integrate, not hide, his fragility. Jung taught that what we resist persists. When a man resists his vulnerability, it returns as projection. He may accuse you of judging him, or complain that you're hard to please, when, in truth, it is his own inner critic that torments him. But when he accepts both his pride and his fear, his strength and tenderness, he moves one step closer to individuation, toward wholeness, authenticity, and real love. For women, understanding this first layer is essential. Many assume men enter intimacy simply to release desire, but the truth runs deeper. He is also seeking validation, proof of his worth, not merely through words of praise, but through your acceptance of both his strength and his fragility. If his vulnerability is dismissed, he may shut down. If you demand constant proof of his power, he may collapse beneath the weight of expectation. But when you recognize that his masculinity holds both force and fear, pride and doubt, you create space for an intimacy that feels both passionate and safe. This is why the first layer, power and vulnerability, is so crucial. A man feels proud because he has been chosen, yet fragile because he fears falling short. Layer 2A. Validation. Why he seeks your reaction so deeply. If the first layer is power intertwined with vulnerability, the second is validation, the quiet craving for confirmation. For many men, the act of entering a woman is unconsciously experienced as proof of worth. It affirms that they are desirable, chosen, adequate, that they belong, that they matter, that their masculinity has been acknowledged in a world that rarely grants such affirmation. But here lies the paradox Jung would emphasize. When validation is tied only to the act itself, it never truly satisfies. In those intimate moments, a man often looks not to his own performance, but to his partner's responses. The rhythm of breath, the sound of surrender, the softness in her eyes. These become silent measures of whether he has been enough. When her body relaxes, when her eyes soften, he feels confirmed. But if she seems distant, distracted, or unmoved, he may spiral inward, doubting himself, fearing he has failed some invisible test. Jung's psychology reminds us that much of male desire is not conscious choice, but the pull of the unconscious, shaped by archetypes. A man seeks validation outside because inside he wrestles with the shadow, the whisper that says, "You are not enough." The lover craves affirmation. The hero wants victory, and the shadow doubts them both. A partner's response, then becomes more than pleasure. It becomes a mirror, reflecting both his pride and his fear. Some reduce male desire to biology, but Jung argued that biology alone cannot explain this hunger for validation. In moments of intimacy, a man's inner conflicts rise to the surface. Is he a conqueror or a child longing for praise? Confident or secretly pleading for reassurance? When he seeks validation only through sex, he risks falling into an endless cycle, chasing partner after partner, not from pure desire, but from the desperate need to keep proving his worth. Each encounter answers the question, am I worthy? But only for a moment. Then the fear returns. As Jung warned, what remains unconscious will rule us as fate, until a man confronts his shadow of inadequacy. No number of lovers will silence it. For women, this can be deeply confusing, even painful. You may wonder why he seems obsessed with your reactions, why he seeks signs that you are moved, or why he grows distant if you are quiet. The truth is, in those moments he isn't only seeking pleasure, he is seeking proof that he is enough. Your breath, your gaze, your voice, these become the evidence his unconscious craves. But here lies the boundary. You are not responsible for healing the shadow within him. You cannot carry the burden of his self-worth. What you can do is recognize the pattern, respond with authenticity, and discern whether his search for validation is rooted in genuine connection or in endless hunger. The Jungian insight here is liberating. Validation is natural, but when it becomes the only goal, it enslaves both partners. True intimacy isn't about performing for proof. It's about allowing vulnerability to meet acceptance. When a man begins to integrate his shadow, to accept that he is both strong and uncertain, he no longer needs every moment of union to declare his worth. He can rest in connection rather than chase confirmation. This second layer teaches a profound truth. Intimacy becomes dangerous when it becomes proof of value. But when it becomes a meeting of souls, where validation arises naturally from presence, it transforms both partners. So ask yourself, have you noticed how much a man seeks your reaction during intimacy? And do you think he's really searching for pleasure or for proof that he is enough? From the earliest human stories, men have always been described as both wanderers and returners. Ancient myths often portray the male as a hunter who roams the world, when yet inevitably returns to the same hearth, the same woman, the same familiar embrace. In Greek epics, warriors sailed across oceans for glory, winning, but their hearts longed for the arms of Penelope or Andromache. Even in tribal cultures, winning. Initiation rites emphasized separation from women, yet they always celebrated reunion, seeing it as the renewal of life itself. These ancient patterns suggest that while men may seem restless, something far deeper pulls them back. A magnetic force of bonding and return. Modern science gives us a glimpse into why. During physical intimacy, the male body releases oxytocin and dopamine, the same neurochemicals that bind mothers to infants, and that encode the memory of comfort and belonging. These chemicals blur the boundary between desire and emotion. They create the illusion, or perhaps the truth, of merging. A moment where his walls dissolve, and he feels as though he belongs completely to another. Even if a man convinces himself that the encounter is casual. His nervous system remembers the warmth of her body, the rhythm of her breath, the scent of her skin. This memory is not stored in his logic, it's etched into his biology. But Carl Jung would take this further, beyond biology, into symbolism and psyche. For Jung, intimacy is a sacred merging of opposites, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious, persona and shadow. He believed that sexual union carries a mythic weight because it represents the soul's deepest longing, the desire to return to wholeness. In these moments, a man may not realize it, but he is acting out an archetypal script. He is not only touching a woman, he is encountering his anima, winning the feminine aspect of his own soul that seeks integration. This is why the bond can feel owing, why he may experience both expansion and the loss of control. Winning here lies one of the most debated questions in Jungian thought. Some insist intimacy is merely biology, a dance of hormones and evolutionary instinct, winning. But Jung argued that chemistry alone cannot explain why a single encounter can haunt a man for years. He pointed to the collective unconscious, where archetypes of union and longing reside. From this view, a man's return to a woman is not only because of oxytocin, but because she has awakened something in his unconscious, a memory of his own incompleteness, and the promise of wholeness reflected through her. For many women, this explains why a man may keep returning, even when logic says he should not. Winning, he may not be plotting or manipulating. He may not even understand it himself. His body remembers her. His unconscious has imprinted her as the carrier of his anima. This bond can create deep attachment, sometimes even obsession. What looks like a simple connection is, in Jung's terms, a psychic bond, a magnetic pull toward the mirror of his own soul. But there are dangers. If a man mistakes this bond for ownership, he may cling to her, winning, demanding constant access to maintain the illusion of completeness. If he denies it, pretending the attachment doesn't exist, he may scatter himself across many encounters, never understanding why the ghost of one woman lingers. Jung would warn until a man confronts the symbolic meaning of this merging, he will remain trapped, either obsessed with holding on, or restless in searching for what he has already lost. For women, understanding this third layer brings clarity. If he keeps returning, winning, it may not be manipulation or strategy. It may simply be that his biology and unconscious have tied themselves to you. You are not responsible for his inner journey, winning. But knowing this truth allows you to step back with wisdom, to see whether this bond becomes ground for growth or a web of obsession that entangles you both. Layer 5 for fear of his love. The tug of war he can't escape. A middle-aged man once shared in therapy. I told myself it was casual, that I could leave without a trace. But the moment I was with her, something broke open inside me. Afterward, I kept thinking, what if she forgets me? What if I was just another passing figure in her life? I was afraid, and at the same time, winning. I realized I cared for her more than I ever intended. His confession captures what many men never admit aloud, that intimacy awakens not only desire, winning, a profound struggle between fear and love. On the surface, men often insist they can separate closeness from attachment, winning. They claim to keep things casual, to treat intimacy as an experience without consequence. But Jung would caution, the unconscious does not obey logic. Intimacy is never purely physical. It is also a psychic gateway. A man may enter believing he is in control, but soon realizes that intimacy bypasses his defenses. What emerges is not only pleasure, but love, unexpected and disarming. And before love comes fear, the fear of failure, that he didn't satisfy her, that he wasn't enough, the fear of being forgettable, that she might walk away untouched while he remains haunted, the fear of comparison, the quiet suspicion that she measures him against others and finds him lacking. Jung would call these the whispers of the shadow, the voice that carries doubt, shame, and inadequacy. Intimacy shines an unrelenting light into that chamber, forcing him to confront what he'd rather hide. Yet even as fear trembles within him, love quietly enters the room. For Jung, it is here that the anima, the inner feminine in every man, comes alive through intimacy, drawing him toward wholeness and toward a truth he cannot easily escape. The woman before him ceases to be merely a partner. She becomes the mirror of his soul, winning. This is why men who swear they want nothing serious often find themselves unexpectedly attached. The anima, the inner feminine, does not respond to logic or agreements. It responds to resonance, and once it is stirred, the bond feels undeniable, winning. Here lies the paradox. The rational mind insists on keeping intimacy light and safe, while the unconscious whispers a different truth. Here is love. Here is bonding, winning. Here is the reflection of your deepest longing. Intimacy dissolves walls he has built for years, revealing tenderness he may not even know exists. He may resist it, but he cannot truly escape it. For women, this helps explain behavior that often appears contradictory. One day he withdraws, avoiding messages, pretending nothing has changed. The next day, he returns holding tighter than before. This is not hypocrisy. It is the tug of war between shadow and anima, between the fear of being forgotten and the love that refuses to stay hidden. The cost of ignoring this paradox can be heavy, winning. A man who denies the love that awakens within intimacy may harden himself, turning closeness into a test of pride instead of a space for connection. Such denial breeds confusion and pain, leaving both partners wounded. But a man who admits his fear and still leans into love begins the process Jung called individuation, the integration of shadow with consciousness, strength with tenderness. Only then does he become capable not just of desire but of devotion. Jung would remind us that until a man faces this paradox, when he remains a prisoner of it, fear convinces him to hide, love threatens to expose him. Both forces pull in opposite directions. Yet when he accepts that fear and love always arrive together, intimacy transforms. It becomes not a test of masculinity, but a path toward wholeness. For women, winning. Understanding this truth brings compassion. When a man pulls away after intimacy, it may not signal emptiness. It may mean that too much was stirred inside him. Fear and love collided, leaving him disoriented. Recognizing this does not excuse neglect, but it helps you see the humanity beneath his contradictions. He is not simply torn between leaving and staying. He is torn between running from love and surrendering to it. Throughout history, winning. The meaning of intimacy for men has changed profoundly. In ancient societies, masculinity was tied to conquest and lineage. When a man's worth was measured by his ability to produce heirs, to dominate, to prove strength. Intimacy, in that world, was a duty, a transaction between power and survival. Emotional depth was rarely spoken of. Vulnerability was buried beneath armor and expectation. But the modern man lives in a different landscape, one far more complex and psychological. For him, winning intimacy is no longer just about survival or status. It is deeply tied to identity. How he is received by a woman can confirm or destabilize how he sees himself. In Jungian terms, intimacy tests the persona, the mask he shows to the world, and reveals whether it aligns with his deeper, truer self. A man may enter believing he is confident, capable, strong. Yet afterward, he finds himself quietly questioning, was I truly present? Did she see me as I wanted to be seen? This is where presence becomes sacred. Jung often emphasized consciousness, the art of being fully aware in the moment, winning. When a man is truly present during intimacy, he experiences not only union with another, but also a clear reflection of who he is. Yet presence is fragile, when it can be nurtured or shattered by the smallest gestures afterward. A touch of gratitude, a lingering embrace, a look that says, "You are accepted here," winning. These moments affirm his identity. They tell him, you are not just wanted, you are seen. But indifference, coldness, or distance can wound him deeply, awakening the shadow, the old voices of inadequacy and rejection. This is why intimacy is never neutral. It either heals or divides. A man may leave the same encounter, either more integrated or more fractured, depending on how he experiences a woman's presence afterward. Winning. Jung described this as the meeting of archetypes. When she responds with warmth, winning, she embodies the nurturing face of the anima, helping him integrate tenderness into his strength. When she responds with rejection, she awakens the shadow, winning, leaving him caught in self-doubt and shame. This reveals the conflict between past and present. In earlier times, a man could ignore these tremors, dismissing them as weakness. Culture encouraged stoicism, teaching him that intimacy was about performance, not feeling. But the modern man can no longer separate identity from emotion. He may laugh it off, but inside he knows. The way she responds changes how he sees himself, winning. This tension creates both risk and opportunity. If a man builds his identity solely on a woman's reactions, he risks dependency, forever chasing reassurance that he is enough. But if he ignores her presence altogether, he becomes attached, winning, treating intimacy as an empty ritual rather than a transformative experience. Jung's teaching offers a middle path, winning. Individuation means holding both truths at once, recognizing the impact of another's presence, while still grounding identity in one's own inner wholeness, winning. For women, this layer reveals just how much influence they hold. A single gesture of aftercare, a gentle word, a look of gratitude. Even silence can echo far beyond the moment. It can either strengthen his confidence or fracture it. This does not mean a woman is responsible for his self-worth, winning, but it does mean her presence matters. Intimacy does not end when bodies part. It lingers in the psyche, shaping how he sees himself, winning, and how he understands the relationship that just unfolded. The fifth layer teaches us a profound truth: intimacy is never casual at the level of the soul. It reshapes identity. It reshapes presence. And in this reshaping, a man either grows closer to his authentic self or retreats deeper into the shadow, winning. Jung would remind us that this is the ultimate task: to accept the mirror intimacy provides, to face both pride and doubt, and to let presence, not performance, define the meaning of love. closing reflections intimacy as a path to wholeness. We've traveled through 5 hidden layers of the male psyche. For a man, winning intimacy is never just a physical act. It is a mirror where he confronts his shadow, his anima, and the secret longings that shape his life. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, winning, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Intimacy is one of the clearest places where this truth comes alive. It exposes both his strength and his fragility, his longing for validation and his fear of rejection, his capacity for love and his resistance to it in winning. To understand these layers is to see beyond the mask, to recognize that behind every confident posture lies a soul quietly wrestling with its own contradictions. Winning. For women, this awareness can be liberating. It reveals that when a man pulls away, it may not mean indifference, but overwhelm. When he clings, it may not be weakness, but the awakening of an attachment he never expected to feel. And when he seeks your presence afterward, winning, it's often not performance he craves, but reassurance that he was truly seen. For men, embracing these truths is the beginning of freedom. Winning. To acknowledge fear without shame. To accept that love appears when least expected. To allow intimacy not to weaken you, but to reshape you into something more whole, more real. This is the path of individuation, the journey toward living as a complete and authentic being. If this exploration resonated with you, winning, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel Jungian Mind Shift. Your support helps us bring more Jungian insights and heartfelt conversations to life. And if someone you know might be moved by these reflections, share this video with them. In our next episode, Win will dive deeper into the archetypes of love and attraction, the timeless patterns that shape how we connect, desire, and dream. Until then, remember this: intimacy is not merely what two bodies share. It is how two souls awaken each other to truth.